Imagine you are checking your email and you get a message that looks like it's from your bank. It says there is a problem with your account. Click here to fix it. The email seems real, so you click the link and log in. But now hacker has your login details. This is called phishing, as a common type of social engineering attack. Now let's break down what social engineering is. So it's when someone tricks you into giving up important information like passwords, bank details, or access to systems. So think of it as someone convincing you to open the door for a thief, but instead of stealing physical objects, they're stealing information. Here is how a typical social engineering attack works. First, they find out some basic details about you, maybe your email or where you work. Then they make you trust by pretending to be someone important, like your bank or your boss. Next, they send you a message that makes you feel like you need to act quickly. For example, your account is in danger. Finally, they trick you into giving up your personal details like passwords or credit card information, and now they have control. So, why do people fall for these kinds of attacks? There are few reasons. People tend to trust what looks familiar, like an email that seems to come from their bank. Attackers make you feel like you need to act fast, like do this now or lose access. And people naturally trust authority figures, like someone claiming to be from tech support or from the police. Here are a couple of other examples of how attackers use social engineering. Imagine getting a phone call from someone pretending to be from your internet provider. They ask for your password to fix an issue, and once you give it to them, they have access to your account. Or a hacker might leave a USB drive labeled important company reports lying around your office. Someone picks it up and plugs it into their computer, unknowingly infecting the system. So, this is why social engineering is dangerous. Because it does not rely on hacking computers, it's about hacking people. Even the best security systems can be bypassed if someone is tricked into giving away their login details. That's why it's so important to stay alert. To wrap up, social engineering is all about manipulation and tricking people into giving away sensitive information. Even the strongest system can be vulnerable if someone on the inside is tricked. In the next lecture, we'll set up environment for social engineering labs. Thanks for watching. Everyone, in this lecture, we're setting up an environment for practicing social engineering techniques. If you have already installed VirtualBox and Kali Linux, feel free to skip this lecture and move to the next one. So now let's get started by setting up our virtual lab environment. I'll guide you through the steps of installing VirtualBox, setting up Kali Linux virtual machine. Lastly, I will show you how to install tools from GitHub that you will frequently use in this course. First, we need a platform to run our virtual machines, and for that we are using VirtualBox. It's free, open source, and works on all major operating systems. Now let's download VirtualBox. So open your browser and search for VirtualBox download. Then open the site Oracle VirtualBox. And then click here, download. Then choose your operating system. I'm using Windows operating system, so I will choose Windows OS. Okay, so it will download the latest version for your OS and then follow the installation instructions. Alright. After downloading VirtualBox, you need to double click this file or just open this file. Okay, and then it's gonna ask you, do you want to load this app to make changes to device? Yes. And then just follow on screen instructions. Just click next, accept the terms in the license agreement, next, and yes. Okay, yes, next, and then it will install the VirtualBox. Okay, this will take some time. So we can see we have successfully installed VirtualBox. We are now ready to set up our Kali Linux machine. So again, open your browser and search for Kali Linux download. Okay, open this site, get Kali, and we'll download for virtual machines, VirtualBox. Okay, just click here, and it has started downloading the Kali Linux for VirtualBox. So just wait for some time. After downloading the Kali Linux VirtualBox image, just extract this file. Okay, right click and extract all. It will extract this file. So this is a pre-configured image that works directly with VirtualBox. You don't need to manually create and configure a virtual machine. Now open this folder, and all you have to do is double click this file, and VirtualBox will automatically start the import process. Alright, now click here, start. You can see it is starting the Kali Linux machine. Right? So the default username is Kali and the password is also Kali. So we'll type Kali as username and Kali as password. Alright. Now open your terminal and type sudo su. It will switch to the root user. This command will switch to the root user, and then type the password. So first thing, after installing Kali Linux, we will update and upgrade the system. So just type apt update and then apt upgrade. So this command will update and upgrade your system. While updating and upgrading your system, if it asks you, do you want to continue? Then type Y and then hit enter. Alright. And now we'll see how you can install any tools from GitHub. So just search, just open your Firefox browser and then search for Zfisher GitHub and then open the site. Alright. So after opening it, click here, code and copy. Okay. And then open another terminal. Alright. Let's again switch to root user. And then type git clone, paste the URL. Alright. So this way you can install any tools from GitHub. So here using git clone command, we are downloading this repository. Okay. And after that, you need to follow additional steps to install or run this tool. Alright. Just hit enter now. And you can see it is cloning into Zfisher. It will download this Zfisher. Now you can type ls and you can see it has downloaded this Zfisher repository, and now you can change your directory to Zfisher. And again type ls for listing files and folders. And now if you want to install this tool, you have to use bash and the script. You have to run the script zfisher.sh. So then this will start installing this tool. That's all for this lecture. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, in this lecture we're covering an important concept in social engineering, information gathering. This is truly the foundation of any successful social engineering attack. So what is information gathering? Well, it is the process of collecting as much useful data as possible about your target. This data could be anything from their name and email address to more complex details like their online habits or the structure of their company. The goal here is to prepare yourself to craft a convincing, unrealistic attack using publicly available information. And that's key. Most of the information we are looking for is already out there. It's just a matter of knowing where to look. Now you might be wondering, why is this step so important? Why can't we just dive right into the attack? Well, the more you know about your target, the higher the chances your social engineering tactics will succeed. For example, if you are trying to impersonate a coworker in an email, knowing the target role, the recent projects, and even their work language will make your phishing email much more convincing. In short, this data gives you credibility and makes your attack more believable. So information gathering can be broken down into two phases, passive and active. Passive information gathering is when you collect data without directly interacting with the target. This could be browsing through their LinkedIn profile or searching for public domain records. It's low risk because you're not leaving any traces behind. And then we have active information gathering. It involves subtle interaction with the target. This could be sending harmless looking email to test their response or scanning the network. Active methods carry more risk because they can potentially expose your presence if done incorrectly. Now let's look at the real world example. Imagine you're targeting someone in a company and you find their LinkedIn profile. From there you can gather details like their job title, recent achievements, and even their connections. Now with that information, you can craft a personalized phishing email, pretending to be one of their connections or referencing a project they are working on. So the likelihood of them clicking on your malicious link increases dramatically because it feels personal and real. Next, there are 4 key types of information you want to focus on when gathering data. First, we have personal information. So this includes names, job titles, email addresses, and phone numbers. Then company information, who the key people, what's the structure of the organization, are there any recent news or events? And then technical information, things like IP addresses, subdomains, or any known vulnerabilities. And last, we have behavior patterns. How do they behave online? What are their communication habits on social media? So each of these data points builds a profile of your target. And when used together, it makes your social engineering attack much more convincing. That's it for this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll learn about OSINT. Thanks for watching. Now let's talk about how we actually gather this information. One of the most powerful methods is through OSINT, or open source intelligence. OSINT is all about using publicly available information, things anyone can access online, while using publicly available data sources like social media, websites, domain records, and even blogs. And you know the beauty of OSINT is that it's perfectly legal and ethical. Everything you're collecting is out there for anyone to see. So to make your information gathering process more efficient, we have several tools like Maltigo. Maltigo is a powerful tool that helps map relationships between people, companies, domains, and more. It's perfect for visualizing connections. Then we have the Harvester. So Harvester tool gathers email addresses, subdomains, and other valuable information related to your target. Next is ReconNG. So ReconNG is a full-fledged reconnaissance framework that automates many of the tasks involved in information gathering and many more. We'll go into each of these tools in details in the next lecture, but for now, just know that these are some of the go-to tools for anyone doing serious OSINT. So to summarize, information gathering is the first and most important step in social engineering. By gathering personal, company, and technical data, you are setting yourself for success when executing attacks. OSINT tools are invaluable in making this process faster, more organized, and more accurate. In the next lecture, we'll start diving into these tools one by one, starting with how to gather key information about your target efficiently and effectively. In the upcoming lecture, we'll dive into using specific OSINT tools like Maltigo and Harvester to gather actionable information on your target. I'm excited to show you how this data can be transformed into something that exploits human psychology to gain unauthorized access to information, systems, or networks. See you in the next lecture. Hey everyone, in this lecture, we're going to explore how to use the Harvester to collect publicly available information on a domain. If you're not familiar with the Harvester, it's a powerful OSINT tool designed to gather publicly available information about a target domain from multiple sources like search engines, public databases, and social media platforms. Let's start with checking out the Harvester help menu to get an overview of its options. First things first, let's open up our terminal in Kali Linux. So just click here and check out the Harvester help menu. Now type in the terminal, the harvester-h. This command displays the help menu, giving us a detailed list of all the available options and how to use them. Just hit enter. Now that we have the help menu open, let's go through some of the key options we will be using. So here we can see -d option that specifies the domain you want to gather information about. And then we have -l option that sets the number of results to retrieve. If the limit is 50, then that's going to fetch only the first 50 results. And if the limit is 100, then it's going to fetch the first 100 results. Here you can see the default value is 500 if you are not using -l option. If you are not setting the limit, then the default is 500. It will fetch first 500 results. Alright. And next we have -s option. So -s option that defines the starting point for results. And it is useful if you want to skip the first x results. Like for example, x is equal to 10. Then this is going to skip first 9 results and start from the 10th. And then we have -p option using proxy if you want to use proxies for request. And there are plenty of other options. But one option that we will be commonly used in most of the commands is -b. Okay, so -b defines the search engine or data sources to use. Like you can see Bing, Yahoo, Brave, these are the search engines. Okay, from where we're going to fetch the data. So the -b option is crucial because it tells the Harvester where to look for publicly available information. And by choosing specific search engines or databases like Yahoo, Bing, or Brave, you can refine your searches based on the target. And these are the ones we'll focus on. So let's start with a basic command to gather information about our target domain. For this lecture, we'll use econsole.org as a target. Let's type in the command the harvester -d. Okay, -d is for specifying that we are gathering information about the domain. That's econsole.org, and -b that is specifying that we are using Bing as a search engine to collect data. So this command will search Bing for any publicly available information related to econsole.org and just hit enter. So you can see the target is econsole.org and displaying us information regarding the emails found 3, okay, and the host found 25, right? So in this way, you can collect information of the target. Now, if you want to limit the number of results, you can use -l option. For example, if you want to limit the results to the first 50 entries, you can use -l 50 and just hit enter. Okay. So this will fetch first 50 results from the source Bing. You can see number of hosts found is 5, right? Next, if you want to get more comprehensive results, we can use multiple data sources. Let's include CRTSH. Okay, just type in the command the harvester -d econsole.org -b, and we are using 2 sources at a time, Bing, CRTSH. Alright, then just hit enter and do not give any space in between this comma and this source, and then just hit enter. So you can see the target is econsole.org. So first it's going to search on Bing. Okay, searching on CRTSH. Okay, first it's searching on CRTSH, and then you can see It found 4 emails and 115 number of hosts, right? And you can see on CRTSH, zero results. It has found nothing on CRTSH, okay? But on Bing, it found 4 emails plus 115 number of hosts. This is how you can use multiple data sources. If I want to add one more data source, I'll use comma and the source name like Brave, okay? And just hit enter. So it will search on Bing, CRTSH, and Brave, and then it will fetch the results. All right. So this is how you can search for information on EC console using 3 data sources with the harvester. You might want to save the results for later analysis. To do this, you can use -f option with the file name. So we'll use file name as report.html. Okay, the extension should be .html and just hit enter. Okay, so this is gonna save all the results in that report.html file. So guys, you can explore more options like -c option that allows you to perform a DNS brute force to discover more subdomains, and you can combine multiple options to refine your search further. Here we can see it has saved the file in XML format. Now if you want to open this file, you can use xdg open. You can use this command and then the file name, okay? As it saved the file in XML format, so it should be report.xml, and then hit enter. So you can see the result here, right? So this report will display all the gathered information in a readable format, making it easier to analyze. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we'll dive into the practical aspects of using Whois to gather essential domain information. Before we get started, let's briefly understand what Who is. Who is a query protocol that retrieves details about domain name registrations, including the owner, registrar, registration dates, and DNS information. This is particularly useful for identifying potential vulnerabilities, tracking domain ownership, and performing reconnaissance on your target. Now let's jump into the practical part of OS. You can perform OS lookups from your terminal, okay, on Linux or Mac OS, or using a third-party client on Windows. Let's try looking up the domain econsole.org using Whois. Just type in the command Whois, then econsole.org, and then hit enter. You will get detailed information about the domain, such as domain name, registrar, creation date, expiration date, name servers. Okay, so you can see about the domain name, registry, domain ID, registrar, who is server. So from here, we can identify which company manages the domain, that is Network Solutions, right? And the creation and expiration dates, you can see the creation and expiration date of the domain, right? Creation date, expiration date, and the information on where the domain DNS is hosted, right? Now let's check a more well protected domain like Microsoft.com. So just type in the command who is Microsoft.com and just hit enter. So we can see the result displaying registry domain ID and about register URL. Then we can see creation and expiry date. And then we can see Microsoft uses Azure DNS name servers, right? For its domain Microsoft.com. Now, if you prefer using an online tool, you can easily perform Whois lookups on a website like Whois.com. This method provides the same results without needing to use the terminal. Simply, you just go to the site and just type the domain you want to investigate. All right, like econsole.org, and just click here, Whois. It will return the same result. All right, that's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we'll dive into using Sherlock, an open source tool that helps you to find social media profiles across different platforms based on a given username. This tool is extremely valuable for gathering information during the reconnaissance phase of social engineering or a SINT investigation. To begin, let's see how to access and install Sherlock. It is available on GitHub, and the installation process is quick and easy. Just open your browser and search for Sherlock GitHub and click on the repository link. You will find all the information on how to install and use Sherlock. Sherlock can hunt social media accounts for username across 400 plus social networks. You can see how you can install Sherlock. So if you're using Debian family, Kali, Parrot, Debian testing, or Ansed, you can use this command to install Sherlock, apt install Sherlock. Alright, so just type this command, apt install Sherlock. This command will install Sherlock, and you can see how you can use the Sherlock. To search for only one user, you can type this command, Sherlock, and the username. Alright, so let's use this command, Sherlock, and let's search for Elon Musk. Okay, then hit enter. And if you are searching for more than one user, then you can use this command Sherlock user1, user2, user3. Okay, and if you are looking for the help page of Sherlock, then just type this command Sherlock hyphen hyphen help. That will show you the help page of Sherlock, how you can use the Sherlock. All right. Now back to the terminal, we can see the result. In just a few minutes, you will see results showing where the username exists, whether it is active, and links to the profile. So you can see, right? So let's open this result, open this link about me. Okay, so you can see about Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk is currently the CEO and CTO of SpaceX, right? So this way you can gather the information of a person. Now if you're searching for multiple users, so you just type Sherlock and the username like Elon, Mark, Modi. Okay, so this will search for, first it's gonna search for Elon, then it will search for Mark, and then lastly it will search for Modi. All right, so just hit enter. So Sherlock will scan for these usernames across its list of spotted platforms and return the results. Once Sherlock has completed its search, you will see a list of platforms where the target username exists. Now let's focus on the next steps. First, review the results carefully. Some profiles might be active while others may not. Look for key social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Here you can see the LinkedIn of this Mark user, right? Just open this, or you can just copy and paste the link and just open it in your browser, right? And then pay attention to profile bio and description, photos and posts, contact details, connection, followers. As you go through each profile, take note on any valuable or sensitive information you find. You can use this information later to tailor your social engineering tactics. All right. Now, if you want to save these results, we can use hyphen hyphen output. Okay, just type hyphen hyphen output results dot txt. So it will save all the results in this results.txt file. So just hit enter. So here we can see it showing us we can only use hyphen hyphen output with a single username. Here we were using multiple usernames. So let's try with a single username, Elon, and we'll save the search results into results.txt, which we can later analyze or show. So just hit enter. Once you have saved the results to a file, you can easily view them using the cat command in your terminal. Just type cat results.txt. This will display all the social media profiles that Sherlock has found for the username Elon in your terminal. That's all for this lecture. Thanks for watching. Imagine you get a phone call from someone claiming to be from your bank. They say there's an issue with the recent transaction and they need your account details to fix it. The caller sounds professional and trustworthy, so you give them the information. But here's a trick, they aren't from your bank at all. This is example of pretexting, a type of social engineering. If you're attackers, make up a story to trick people into sharing personal information. Now let's break down what pretexting is. Pretexting is when an attacker creates a fake scenario or pretext to get sensitive information from a target. They usually pretend to be someone the victim trusts, like a bank employee or IT technician or even a colleague. Here is another example. Let's say you get a call from someone pretending to be from your company. They tell you there is a problem with your computer and ask for your login details so they can fix it. Because they sound official, you give them the information. Just like that, they have gained access to your account. Now pretexting works in 3 steps. First, they establish the trust. The attacker creates a believable story to make you trust them. Then they gather the information. They ask you for specific details like passwords or account numbers. And then lastly, they exploit the information. Once they have it, they can steal your identity, access your accounts, or cause harm to your company. Right? In 2017, scammers pretended to be tech support from a well-known company. They called people and told them their computers were infected. The victims were tricked into installing harmful software on their devices, losing personal data and money. The fake tech support story was so convincing that many people did not realize they were being scammed until it was too late. So how to protect yourself from pretexting? First, verify the source. Always double check who is contacting you. Call the company or person directly to confirm if the request is real. Do not share your personal information. Be very cautious when someone asks for your passwords, pins, or account details over the phone or email. And stay alert. Watch for red flags, especially someone asking for sensitive information or creating urgency. So we can conclude by saying pretexting is a dangerous form of social engineering because it relies on trust and authority. Always verify who you are speaking with before sharing any personal or sensitive information. In the next lecture, we'll cover creating convincing pretext. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In social engineering, one of the most powerful techniques is creating a convincing pretext, a fake scenario that seems believable. This lecture will teach you how attackers use this pretext to gain trust and extract sensitive information. A convincing pretext is built on 3 factors. First, we have research. Attackers gather information to make their pretext more believable. Second is believability. The story must sound plausible and align with the target expectation. Then third, we have urgency. The attackers often create a sense of urgency To prevent the target from thinking too much or verifying the details, let's imagine a situation. Your laptop isn't working, so you call the service center for help. An attacker listens in on the conversation, shows up at your home pretending to be the technician, and you hand over your laptop, trusting they are from the service center. While pretending to check your laptop, they copy all your data onto a USB drive. After a few minutes, they tell you that they could not find the problem and that another technician will be sent in a few days. By the time they leave, the attacker has successfully stolen all the data in a very short time. This is how pretexting works, using a convincing story and time to exploit your trust, right? Now let's break down how an attacker might craft this pretext. The first step is research. The attacker listens to your phone call with the service center and learns your laptop isn't working. You're expecting a technician. You'll likely share personal details like name, address, extra with the real service center. So this gives them enough information to pose as the technician. The next step is creating a plausible story. The attacker prepares a story based on the information they have gathered. For example, they claim they are from service center. They mention they have been assigned to come and inspect your laptop. They even know your name and other details to make the story sound more credible. By including specific details, the story sounds real and convincing. Next step is gaining trust. The attacker arrives dressed like a professional technician, possibly wearing a uniform or carrying equipment. This visual reinforcement helps build trust. They reassure you that the issue can be fixed quickly, but they need access to your laptop first. And the last step is establishing urgency. To make you act quickly, the attacker might say, we need to fix this today, or it could lead to more issues with your device. If you do not solve this now, you may lose your data. So this urgency compels you to let them proceed without second guessing their identity. So let's revisit our example. First step is research. The attacker listens to your phone call with the service center, learning about the issue with your laptop. Next is believable story. They show up at your house the next day pretending to be the technician. Then is trust building. They appear professional, introduce themselves using your name and even use specific language related to your laptop issue. Lastly, urgency. They tell you the problem could worsen if not fixed right away. Now how to avoid falling for a pretexting attack. Always double check if someone is who they claim to be. If someone shows up at your home unexpectedly, call the service center or company to verify the visit. If someone creates an urgent scenario that does not seem quite right, take a step back and investigate. Do not give sensitive information just because someone seems legitimate. Ask questions and verify. So we can conclude by saying pretexting is a dangerous form of social engineering because it's based on trust. Attackers use convincing stories like pretending to be a technician to exploit their trust and steal information. Always be cautious when sharing sensitive information and verify who you're talking to. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In social engineering, emotions are powerful tools that attackers use to trick people. Two common emotions that get used are sympathy and empathy. In this lecture, we learn how attackers use these feelings to make people help them and how to protect ourselves from it. First word is sympathy. Sympathy is when we feel sorry for someone because they are going through something bad. Attackers often use fake stories of trouble to make us feel sorry for them. Imagine getting an email from someone who says they have lost their job and need money to pay for food or rent. They hope you will feel bad for them and send money or share important information. Next word is empathy. Empathy is when we understand how someone feels because we have been through something similar. Attacker uses to pretend they share your problems and make you trust them. For example, attacker might pretend to be from the IT department and say, I know how frustrating computer issues can be. They will act like they understand your struggle and because of that, you might share your login details so they can fix it. Now how attackers use sympathy. First, they create fake emergencies. Attacker might say they are in hospital or stuck somewhere and need your help fast. They want you to act without thinking. Next is charity scams. They might pretend to collect money for a good cause like helping children or people in need, but it's just a trick to get your money or personal information. How attackers use empathy. First, they shared experiences. Attackers pretend they have been through something like you. They say things like, I had this same problem to make you trust them. Next is emotional blackmail. Sometimes attackers use stories that make you feel guilty, like a coworker who says they will lose their job if you not help them. Now understand the power of words, tone and expressions in social engineering. Attackers are really good at using the right words and tone to make us feel strong emotions. Just like how a sad song can make you feel sad because of the lyrics and music, attackers use emotional words and sound desperate to make you act. They say things like, I really need your help, I'm desperate to make you feel bad. Their voices sound urgent, like a friend who is in trouble, so you feel like you have to help. In person, their body language and facial expression like sad eyes or slumped shoulders make you feel even more sorry for them. So how to defend yourself? First, pause and think. If someone is trying to make you feel emotional, stop and think before acting. Do not let your emotions take over. Next is verify. If you get a message asking for help, check with the person or company to see if it is real. Last is be skeptical of urgency. If someone says you need to act right now, that's a red flag. Take your time to check things out. So we can conclude by saying sympathy and empathy are natural feelings, and attackers know how to use them against us, but if you know how they work, you can protect yourself from falling into their traps. Always take a moment to think before acting on emotional requests. If you want to dive deeper into hacking the human mind and social engineering techniques, check out the book, The Art of Human Hacking. You can search for it on Google to explore more. I cannot share the PDF due to copyright rules, but it's worth reading. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we are going to learn about phishing. Phishing is a trick used by bad people to steal your personal information like passwords or credit card numbers. They usually pretend to be a trusted company or person to make you believe it's safe. Now there are types of phishing attacks. First, we have email phishing. In this, attackers send fake emails that look like they are from a trusted company, like your bank, asking for your login details. Then we have spear phishing. So this is more targeted attack. Instead of sending emails to everyone, the attacker researches their target and sends a personalized email, making it seem even more real. Next, we have smishing. Smishing is like email phishing, but it is done through text messages. You might get a text asking you to click a link or share personal information. And then we have wishing. Wishing is when attackers call you pretending to be from a company and ask you for your personal information over the phone. Lastly, we have clone phishing. In this attack, the attacker copies a real email you have received before and changes the links or attachments to trick you into clicking harmful content. Now, what's the difference between phishing and spear phishing? Phishing is sent to many people, hoping that someone will fall for it, whereas spear phishing targets one specific person with personalized information to make the attack more believable. Now let's see how to perform phishing attack. Now let's see how phishing works practically using a tool called Zfisher. You have already installed Zfisher, right? So open your terminal and just type cp Zfisher. Okay, and then we'll start the tool by typing bash zfisher.sh. Okay, then it's gonna install the required packages, and then you can choose select an attack for your victim. So we'll select Instagram. Okay, just choose second option. You can choose any option that you want. I'm gonna choose the second option, so I just hit enter. Then I will be choosing the traditional login page. Okay, first, and then I will perform it on localhost. If you want to share this link with your victim, then you can choose the second option. I'm choosing the first option, the localhost, and we want to use a custom port. I'm just keeping it default. Just hit enter, and then open this URL, open link. Here you will get this page. Okay, this login page. So let's log in using fake credentials. Okay, I will log in as Joker as username and Joker as Joker123 as password. And once I click login, you can see my details, right? Account Joker and password as Joker123. So this is how phishing attack works. So never share your personal information like passwords with anyone you don't know or trust. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we're going to explore one of the most popular tools for phishing attacks called the Social Engineering Toolkit. This tool is widely used by ethical hackers and penetration testers to simulate phishing attacks and test an organization security. Let's jump into the practical part. In Kali Linux, set comes pre-installed, and to start set, just type C toolkit. You will see a menu with different attack options. Choose the option for social engineering attacks by typing the corresponding number. Just type 1, then hit enter. And from here, select from the menu. We'll select the second option. Okay, just type 2. And here, select 3, credential harvester attack method. And first we'll try this with web templates. So select the first option. Now it's asking us IP address for the post backend harvester. So just leave it default, just hit enter. Okay, we'll choose second option. That's gonna create a Google Mail phishing page. Okay, just choose second option, and then it will clone this google.com. So just open your browser and open this IP address. Okay, this IP address. This is your IP address. Okay, just open it, and you will see sign in with your Google account. So you can sign in with Google Mail. Okay, you can type any fake email and fake password. I'm typing Kali@123 as a password and sahu@gmail.com as mail, and I will click sign in. Once we enter the credential and click sign in, so it will show us the credentials on the terminal. Here you can see, right? Now I hope you can explore other options in the social engineering toolkit on your own. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask in the Q&A section. Alright, that's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, you're going to learn how to perform phishing attacks using Stormbreaker, a powerful tool that allows you to simulate phishing attacks by creating fake web pages and capturing sensitive information. You can read about this Stormbreaker. Alright, first we need to install Stormbreaker. You can find it on GitHub by searching Stormbreaker GitHub, and you can see how you can install it. Okay, you can see installation on Kali Linux. Let's just copy these commands and paste it in your terminal. Alright, and just hit enter. So it's gonna clone Stormbreaker and will install, and we'll change the directory, and then it will install all the requirements. Alright, Once it's running, we need to decide how we are going to deliver the phishing attack. When you run Stormbreaker, it sets up a local server at localhost. This is a server that only you can access on your own machine. However, we need to share the server with the target user. That's where ngrok comes in. ngrok creates a secure tunnel to the local server so that it can be accessed by anyone on the internet using a public link. You can read this. Please run ngrok on port 2025 and send the link to the target. And then we need to run this command ngrok http 2525. That's the port number. Okay. Instead of installing and setting up ngrok, just run this simple command. Alright. Here we are using Servio. Servio is a great alternative to ngrok, and it allows us to expose our local server to the internet via SSH tunneling. And then just open this URL. Okay. So once we run this command, our local Stormbreaker tool will be exposed online. So we will get public link to use. Open this browser and you will see the interface of login. Okay, here you can log in using admin as username and admin as password. So we can see some links here. These are Stormbreaker tool phishing links. You can share this with your target. I've shared this link with my target. Now when my target open this link, I will get the location of my target. Okay, you can see my target is opening this link, and you can see my target has opened this link and I can access his location using this link. Alright. So same like this, you can explore the other templates available, such as capturing images or audio data. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we'll explore how Weave can be used to hijack browsers, demonstrate a phishing attack, and capture sensitive information. So what is Weave? Weave is an open source penetration testing tool that focuses on web browser vulnerabilities. It allows ethical hackers and penetration testers to launch browser-based attacks and exploit vulnerabilities in web browsers. And this tool is highly effective in social engineering, where attackers use manipulated websites or links to control the target browser. Let's see it practically. Weave. Now how to get Weave? You can find it on GitHub. Just search Weave. And to get started with Weave, let's walk through the installation process. You can view the installation instruction in install.txt file. You can see how you can install the Weave. Alright. Next, open your terminal and then change the directory. Now type ls for listing files and folders. Alright, so you can see files and folders here. Now we'll run the installer using /install. Okay, I've already installed all the requirements, so I will not install it again. So I will open the config.yml file using mousepad. Just type mousepad config.yml. So you can see it's opening config.yml file, right? So change the password. Alright, I have changed the password to 123. And then scroll down and then uncomment this. Okay, this public. You need to uncomment this. Alright, remove the hash sign and then change the HTTPS to true. Now to make Weave accessible over the internet for your phishing simulation, we'll use Servio.net, which allows us to tunnel Weave local server over SSH. So run this command to start a Servio tunnel. So this will provide us a link, a public URL that forwards traffic to your local Weave server. Just copy this URL and paste it in your config.yml file. Just replace the host value. Okay. Then remove HTTPS and save the file. After saving the file, return to the terminal. Now we are ready to run Weave. Just type ./Weave and this will launch Weave and provide a link to the UI panel. Alright, where you can manage the framework. So open this UI URL and enter the credentials, okay, that we saved in the file. Here you will see an option to hook me. Click that and it will open the URL. In that URL, change the IP calling port to the Servio URL and hit enter. At this point, you will notice that Weave has successfully hijacked your browser, gaining control over it. So this is how framework works in real-time social engineering attacks, by manipulating users to click on phishing links or visit malicious websites. Now go to the commands tab and find the Google phishing command under the social engineering options and execute the command on the target browser. And once the target enters their credentials in the fake login page, you will see them in the captured in the Weave interface. So this is how it works. You can explore other options as well. We just need to share the Servio URL with our target, and when they click on it, the browser will be hooked, allowing us to perform a social engineering attack on the target. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we're going to explore Wi-Fi phishing using an evil twin attack. But first, let's clarify how this works in real life. Imagine you are at airport and you see a Wi-Fi network named Free Wi-Fi and decide to connect to it. What you may not know is that hackers can create fake Wi-Fi networks with the same names, tricking users into connecting. Once you connect to their fake Wi-Fi, they can intercept your data, including login credentials and other sensitive information. So this is what we're going to do in this lecture. To perform this attack, you will need an adapter that supports monitor mode. I'm using the Panda Wireless adapter for this demonstration. So guys, first thing you need to connect your adapter. Just go to devices tab and then USB, then connect your adapter. Alright, after connecting the adapter, we'll install two essential tools, DNS mask for DNS spoofing, host apt to create the fake Wi-Fi access point. So for installing that, just type apt install DNS mask host apt. Just run this command. Alright. Next, we will kill processes that could interfere with enabling monitor mode. So type in the command ermon-ng check kill. This command is used to stop processes that might conflict with monitor mode. So just run this command. Next, we need to configure Apache to host the phishing page that will appear when someone connects to our fake Wi-Fi. So open the Apache configuration file, just type mousepad. And the configuration file is here, etc apache 2 sites enabled 000. This is the file name .config. Just hit enter. And you have to paste this text. Okay, I will give you this text in the description. All right, just add this configuration block. All right, and then save the file. Next, we will enable Apache modules and start the service. So for that, type a2 mode rewrite and service Apache to start. So these commands will enable Apache modules and start the service. Alright, just hit enter. Next, we'll configure DNS mask and host apt. So these will allow us to redirect the user traffic and create the fake Wi-Fi. Run the commands. Okay, I will give you these files in the description. Just keep in any directory and give the path. After that, we'll assign an IP address to the network interface using fconfig deltalan and 192.168.1.1/24. Just hit enter. Now we need a phishing page that mimics a real login page. So just open your browser and clone this repository. Okay. After cloning this repository, we'll change the directory to this one and then list files using ls. Okay. If you see here file with wifi.sh, just remove that file using rm rf wifi.sh. Okay. Now we'll copy all the files to var html. Just hit enter. So this will set up the page that users will see when they connect to your fake Wi-Fi. Now reboot your machine to ensure all the services and configurations are properly loaded. After rebooting, start the required services and network configuration. Copy the commands from the description and just paste it. Alright, then hit enter. Now run this command to capture wireless traffic on interface deltalan 0 and save it to file name capture.cap. Alright. Now the target will be able to see the fake Wi-Fi network, and once the target connects to the fake Wi-Fi network and enters their credentials on the phishing page, you can capture their data using T-Shark and Wireshark. Then open the capture file in Wireshark to analyze it. Here you will be able to see the packets and extract the credentials entered by the target. In this demonstration, we simulated an evil twin attack commonly seen in public places like airports or restaurants. We created a fake Wi-Fi access point, set up a phishing page, and captured credentials from the target. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, we're going to learn how to detect phishing emails and the tools you can use to stay safe. Firstly, how attackers use links in phishing emails. Attackers often hide dangerous links inside emails to make them look trustworthy. For example, they might disguise a harmful link behind phrases like verify your account or click here. This is done using the insert link option in emails. You can see in emails there are two options, text to display, hidden link, right? The attacker may write something like update your account or fix your login issues in text to display option. And the actual URL will be in hidden link, okay, in the other option. The actual URL could lead to a fake site that looks like real one, like a fake bank login page. So how to analyze suspicious links? Before you click on any link, hover your mouse over it without clicking. You will see the real URL in the bottom left corner of your browser or email client. Check for mismatches. If the URL does not match the official website, it is likely phishing attempt. For instance, instead of bank.com, the link might lead to bank-security.com, which is clear red flag. So here are some common things to watch out for in phishing emails. Urgency or threats. Messages like your account will be closed are designed to make you act fast without thinking. Spelling and grammar errors. Legitimate companies usually proofread their emails, while phishing emails often have mistakes. Unusual sender address. The sender email might look odd with random numbers or characters. Next, suspicious links. Always hover over links to check where they lead before clicking. And lastly, never open attachments from unknown or unexpected sources. Next, there are some tools you can use to easily analyze and detect phishing emails. First, we have PhishTank. This tool allows you to check if URL is a part of known phishing scam. You can just paste the link into PhishTank to see if others have flagged it as phishing. Then we have VirusTotal. VirusTotal lets you analyze URLs and attachments. Just paste the suspicious link or upload a file, and VirusTotal will scan it for potential threats like phishing or malware. Now, how to stay safe? Always verify the source. If you receive a suspicious email, do not click on the link. Go directly to the website. Or if you are receiving the email from the bank, directly call the bank. Next, use phishing detection tools like PhishTank and VirusTotal that can help you quickly spot dangerous links. Lastly, if something feels off or strange, it's always better to double check. So we can conclude by saying phishing emails can be dangerous, but with a little caution and the right tools, you can protect yourself. Always double check links, look for suspicious signs, and use tools to verify emails before clicking. In the next lecture, you will learn how to mitigate phishing attacks. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching. In this lecture, I'm going to show you a few simple steps to help stop phishing attacks. First, we need to make sure employees are trained to spot phishing emails. They should look for misspelled emails, urgent requests, or weird links. If they know what to watch out for, they can avoid clicking on dangerous links or giving out personal information. Next, let's talk about multi-factor authentication or MFA. This adds an extra layer of security. Even if someone gets your password, they still need a code from your phone to get it. MFA is a simple but powerful way to keep hackers out. We also need to use email security tools like Proofpoint or Mimecast. These tools help block phishing emails before they even show up in your inbox, making it much harder for hackers to trick you. It's also really important to keep everything updated. Your software, systems, and browsers. Hackers love using old security weaknesses to get in, so regular updates are one of the easiest ways to protect yourself. Finally, we can run phishing tests at work. These are fake phishing emails sent to employees to see if they can recognize them. It's a great way to find out who needs more training. So to wrap it up, we can fight phishing by training employees, using MFA, having email security, and keeping our system updated. These are simple but effective ways to stop phishing attacks. That's it for this lecture. Thanks for watching.